Thank you for being here. And a big thank you for those that have been with us for the entire day. It must have been a bit of a grind, but I want to say we saved the best for last. You tell me in a few minutes' time, but just a big thank you. And hopefully, the next few minutes are going to be of tremendous value to you because I think we packed a lot in here that I think it will. I thought it'd be good to start here. This whole thing. And it feels like these days, we're all trying to chase after and yearn for what we think is, well, chasing after the Emerald City and the Yellow Brick Road. And there's, a lot of good comparisons for what is now actually a movie that's close to 90 years old, which is quite wild. Oz is this mysterious, magical phenomenon that dazzles us. But for those of us who remember the movie, we know that when we pulled back the curtain, there was a human behind there. And in this moment of technological wonder and the silver bullet of what we think AI is or isn't, it's really causing us to question who's really behind who's really behind the curtain. And well, what we're finding is that, well, it's a very real path to the Emerald City. This is just one stat, and I'm sure you've probably seen a few of these at this point today of McKinsey reporting that AI-powered agents and robots could unlock 2.9 trillion in annual US economic value. How do you say no to that, Yellow Brick Road, right? But of course, as we're learning in real time, we're really struggling to see the ROI behind that. In fact, only 6% of executives are actually seeing the ROI despite so many people using it. And what we're actually finding out, well, in this path of is, well, is the value there? Where is it coming from? And whether we're talking about unclear AI impact, whether it's through poor ROI visibility or pilots that are not scaling, or we're just not getting there in terms of the output that we're looking for, and it still feels very generic, we're realizing that, well, we're not there in terms of full AI output, in terms of the value we want to create. And also, when you take this onto a human level, well, we need to put the pressure comes back on humans to create. But then we're also seeing a very real-time erosion of human skills. And this was something that we came across in our research that was actually really jarring, is that, well, we're finding out that there's an emergent de-skilling crisis actually amidst all of this. And whether it's cognitive debt or terms that show up every day. I think I saw AI lock-in the other day from Gartner, distributed de-skilling as another example. So all these terms are coming up that really reflect on, well, actually, the piece here that is going to be so hinging on AI success needs to be human, but at the same time, we've got an erosion of human skills. And so all of this is really kind of putting a reset on where is the value coming from. We know this train isn't stopping. We know that we need to figure out the best way to accelerate our AI strategy. But we're also realizing that there's a very deep human layer underneath that needs to be unlocked because, well, the impact isn't there just solely on AI. The silver bullet that we potentially think is still there or not still needs a very strong human component from it. And organizations are scrambling to figure out what's the right next move. And we're finding out, well, the move is, well, more human than ever. And can I just take a second to say, congrats, everybody. We're back. Oh, we're back, baby. Humans are back. We've had a tough little go around the last little while. Definitely been putting a lot of pressure on our emotional availability, but it's good to know. I'm a big Lord of the Rings person, and so this just felt like a very appropriate reference to make here. It felt like we were Gandalf the Grey, we were dwindling off, but no, Gandalf the White is back. Humans are back better than ever. And while we come to you at a time where the AI promise is only going to be fulfilled through a human-led initiative. And we know that this is an overwhelming moment. Pressures are on the business to reclaim AI spend. The silver bullet that we thought would be just isn't there. And humans who have been pulled pillar to post in terms of their emotional availability need to still respond to any of this. So we're in this moment right now. Today is about simplifying. Let's get the balance right between human outcomes and business outcomes. And more than anything, let's just get people going. Not about driving tools, but about unlocking the humanness that we know is going to create the value. So, despite what we're all hearing and feeling, my argument for today is, well, it's actually never been a better time to be human at work. Let's explore that further. It's an absolute joy to spend time with you today. My name is Josh. I'm the Chief Creative and Learning Officer for Sponge. If you haven't heard of us, check us out. I've spent 15 years in the field of people enablement and critical transformation, specializing in all sorts of large enterprise Fortune 500 companies. And I just want to put the caveat here that I'm not an AI expert, but I am certainly a people expert. And we're here today to unlock that layer in order for you to deliver AI value faster, more than anything else. I want to speak about what enablement needs to be in this particular moment. The playbook that used to work up until maybe 6 months ago just doesn't work anymore. I want to talk about the new rules of enablement that's really going to help you accelerate your AI strategy. And of course, I've been on the other side of these. I know that this is all about tangible values, tangible takeaway. I promise we've got oodles, and that's the technical term, oodles of resources for you to help you move faster. And more than anything, help you understand what your next move needs to be. So let's talk about the three people first rules for building AI value. And I thought it'd be really good to actually take a step back and frame about, well, if your AI strategy doesn't really become an AI strategy unless people start doing things differently, what does it actually take to get people to do things differently? And I just wanted to throw in this classic sort of metaphor for what it means to really get people to move. And that it means you need to tap into head, heart, and hands in order to really get people going. Let's use this as sort of a background, or sort of like a conceptual vessel to talk about the other rules. But I just wanted to put that in front because we tend to overly focus on one over the other, or neglect the other, or not do it well. But to really get people moving, it's a combination, it's a harmonious balance of all three things there, of what it means to get people the right knowledge, the right capability, give them clarity on what it needs to get the job done, the specificity on it, but then also speaking to them on an emotional, a psychologically safe level as well too, that they feel authentically inspired to get moving. And if that's what it takes to move people, to get people to do things differently, we wanted to share today our three rules. I call them three acts more than anything else of how to do it well. And we'll talk about each of these in turn because each of these are relevant to how we unlock head, heart, and hands in the most meaningful way that gets value for both people and, more importantly, as well, in this particular moment, accelerating your AI strategy forward for the business. So, Act One, experience matters. There's a temptation in this moment to fill the void, from an enablement perspective of just stuff. We're pretty used to kind of reacting to what the business needs by saying, where should I go build a course? But the challenge with this particular moment is, well, anything that you do in terms of enablement could range anywhere from tone deaf to just inefficient. And we're in this moment in the AI conversation where the next thing you put in front of your people may be the thing that sparks imagination or just gets them a foot further out the door. So the quality, and I'll touch on that in a second, the quality of your enablement experience really matters. Why does it matter? Well, for a few things. One of them is just our ability as enablement leaders to just read the room. There's a lot that we can talk about in this particular section, but the couple of things that I wanted to talk on here is one is just the idea of change exhaustion. And this was a good sort of stat line produced by Gardner here about just the amount of change events someone has witnessed in their career over the last decade or so, and how much that has accelerated in terms of enterprise change events, some that has experienced in their career. And of course, as that volume of change goes up, the willingness for change naturally goes. And so Gardner calls that the transformation deficit. And it's something that we need to keep with us wherever we go, no matter what the enablement experience is that we need to remember that this is in the back of people's minds. The AI picture is moving quickly. And if you ask most companies what their AI strategy is, well, yes, and yesterday, vagueness at pace. And yet somehow people just need to keep up. And so whether it's the latest model update or shift in strategy or frontline messaging, we're moving quickly and people are exhausted from the change. So one of the many rules that we bring into enablement experience is really thinking through how are we bringing proper change management exercises and best practices into whatever it is that we're looking at. So before you even think enablement, think about it through a change management lens. And if change management is, well, part of the room, well, I'd like you to meet the entire room. And that is what we would call generation numb. Now, this is actually a piece of work we did in the past year or so to give a name to what we've all been feeling in the workforce. And the way that I would describe it is, well, the signals are everywhere. The pandemic accelerated trends that are already in action. We've been worn down by chronic uncertainty, fractured by digital saturation, and just no longer moved by lofty company visions. And what we're seeing are changes in how people show up, what they expect, and how much of themselves they're willing to give. So Generation Numb, and it doesn't refer to a specific age generation, but those that have collectively endured this prolonged uncertainty and digital overload. This is about a workforce that's emotionally fatigued, craving connection, and in search of meaning at work. Now, it's easy to say, oh, well, yeah, Josh, I feel it too. That's great. But this is getting directly in the way of that next change initiative, of accelerating that next strategy. And so it's not something to dismiss, but rather put right in the center of what is a blocker to human performance in this particular moment. This is actually a white paper that we produced at Sponge. We'll drop a link for it at the end as well too. Please take the time to read it. I think it's quite good, but that just might be because I co-authored it. But it is certainly the reflection on the workforce that I think a lot of us in the naval space need to read right now. And how do we respond to it directly? Because we need a very direct response in this particular moment. Now, one of the things that come out of Generation Numb is really just the context of the workforce. Isolated, low trust, overwhelmed, like I mentioned, change fatigue. And we're not even talking very specifically about leaders as an example. But when you look at that through the AI transformation lens, you're starting to see that context exacerbated by very particular symptoms, whether it's about not having daily clarity, or you're overwhelmed and being told, just go, go, go with AI, but you don't necessarily have the room to experiment. Talking about change fatigue, are any of us going to experience a more significant change event in our entire careers? Who knows? And so when you look at it through the lens of Generation Numb, that means you need to have an even more radical remedy moving forward. And so the remedy here isn't tech or a platform or a course. You're seeing here that it's actually largely human values. Because in this particular moment, that's the radical remedy for what people need right now. The way we describe it in the white paper is to move from me to us to it, give people individual clarity, help them refine their village, and then inspire them towards the cause of what they're trying to do. And inspiration is probably a really great way to frame why this is so important. Why is a radical response to enablement experience so important in this moment? Well, that's because the very human skills that are eroding in front of us, these are the skills that leaders identify as most important to long-term organizational performance. It's these skills that are most at risk of descaling due to AI. And the thing is that humans create in this space. It's this constellation of skills here that we really need to protect, because only through this path do we get the amazing ideas that drive innovation, that drive effective change, that get teams going. And so a radical response is necessary to not only just protect this space, but really about how we augment it. Now, for a while in this story of AI transformation, we've been throwing around terms like human in the loop and how human assisted AI acceleration. But perhaps we have it the other way, the opposite way around, when it's really about how do we invest and protect into these things here in particular, because this is the generation of real value. And what's the role of AI to accelerate and optimize that? Now, contrarian would say that's a very anti-human approach, but actually, I would say it's a very pro-AI approach because we're realizing that the impact that we're getting is not there without real human generation in this space. So ask yourself what you're doing to protect the constellation of human skills through your enablement experiences. How much of these skills are you incorporating in your enablement experiences and not just having them be transactional content consumption? Something else as well to think about is, well, what is the human quality of your enablement experience? We have to remember that we're asking our people a lot in this moment. We're asking them to be more curious, to have stronger critical thinking, things that actually we know how to do, but all of a sudden there's a ton of pressure on us to do it. And enablement now has a key role to play in refueling people in a way that gets them reconnected to the work. Remember, the goal is we're trying to get people moving in terms of our AI strategy. And part of getting people moving is really human experience that can really fuel the moment and give people the energy to delve into those human areas that we're asking them to do. And so I just put five human values, I would say, as an example. I just wanted to walk you through some live customer stories of how we sort of elevated the enablement experience in order to allow the humanness to come through. So for storytelling, for example, we worked with a Fortune 50 organization, and they just had two enterprise-wide capabilities. And through one of them, they worked with us, and we actually used the entire hero's journey concept as a way to evoke more storytelling in the experience. For an organization with their global capability team, they were doing a yearly camp to bring their capability team, who was responsible for essentially building capability in their 50,000 plus audience of individuals. So just a high profile team here. But they themselves were exhausted. They themselves felt like, well, last year's capability camp didn't necessarily meet the mark. Should we do something that feels a bit radical and should be quite different? And so we came in and we said, let's do 3 days together, but let's do it without technology. And in fact, let's do it without any slides altogether. It was just pen and paper, and it was just each other. So a transformative moment for community. And from one side, the VP in the room said this was a masterclass of facilitation. But on the other side, for those that were in the room getting the work done, they said, I've forgotten that I could do work this way, which I think is a really important moment for what all of us are feeling with the pressure to be on the tools and how isolating it can be. If we want to really protect that constellation and that critical decision making and that curiosity and that creativity, perhaps you need a bit more community in your enablement experiences. What about empathy? Something that humans exclusively can really do. This was something that we did about trying to have a team think on behalf of their customers more and design more for our customers. Now, you can imagine the contrast here of, using the tools to say, give me a transformed CX experience and now go, and then you kind of prompted your way through it. What we actually did was actually did an offsite, a half-day offsite, where we took people to explore the design of public space, whether it's a museum or an aquarium. I find this quite interesting from just an inspirational standpoint. And we gave everyone a persona, and we kind of did an empathy walkthrough to say, hey, use your empathy, whether you're a single mom or an elderly grandparent with mobility issues. Was this space designed for you? And it was a really great moment of empathy to figure out how different our are and how we design for them. So just another human value approach to create an enablement experience to give people the energy to reconnect back to the work. Another example, we worked with a luxury retailer with a storied brand and label. They have an archivist as an example, which is just a really cool role to have in these types of organizations. And we saw that, handwriting it was so key to the brand, and we would look back on scrapbooks and stuff that was the inspiration for us to say, hey, our leaders are part of a long line of leadership for a really storied company. We should have the exact same moment of extending the pen to invite you to a marquee leadership experience. And it's a tiny little touch, and we forget about it in this time, but a very human touch. We wrote handwritten invitations to the leaders to invite them to the kickoff. And then finally, on the path of wonder, and I could wax poetic on the erosion of wonder in our world right now and how important that is to the workforce. But to do a org-wide rollout for actually a risk-led initiative, so compliance-led initiative, we created, I would probably say, like an industry quality side scroller gaming experience or an animated experience based on this concept of a hackathon. This tech company would traditionally have done it face to face. We did this just on the back of the pandemic, so it needed to be a rollout that was more scalable. It was just a way to evoke imagination, something more playful, something more story driven, something that just elevates something from, hey, we need to be a more risk aware company to, well, come play our game and let's explore the consequences through characters and play as well too. And the reason why I bring this up is because of how important it is in this particular moment. Remember, the goal is to get people going. And so enablement needs to be more human than ever to propel people forward. Just remember that human experience is what's going to get people back to creating value, which is what your organization is desperately seeking in this particular moment. If you're writing down notes, don't worry, I'm writing them down as well too for you as well. So putting questions together for you to put in front of your next leadership meeting. Act One, experience matters. How do we protect the constellation of human skills through all our enablement activities? And how are we making sure enablement experiences meet a certain human quality standard that is just necessary enough to prompt authentic action? Act Two, solve what the business needs. No, but like actually solve what the business needs. I know this is bordering on cliche, but this is really an opportunity for us as enablement professions to really reimagine the playbook. Too often we're order takers. Too often we're detached from what the business is really trying to get into. But AI transformation is the perfect opportunity to not only understand the problem better, but to speak back insights to the business that they actually care about. Now, that's a lip service statement. How do we do that in action? We use something called the impact canvas. And what we do is that it's intentionally designed to speak up to the business, to high exec visibility, and speaks the language of the business. So we start with something that's called a compelling question, which is really a strategic narrative to keep us grounded on why we exist. And then we pave a way to where the business is actually headed and the behavior shifts that sit underneath it. Now, this is a bit of a challenge for those of us that perhaps are a bit more head focused, that want to just operate in a knowledge space. There's a problem, so let's fill a knowledge bucket and let's just scale it out. But what we want to actually do is talk about what is the specific shift that we want to have people do. What were people doing yesterday? What does it look like that it's different today? And so we not only articulate the very specific behavior shift, but then we also identify that behavior shift in key performance moments. The reason why we do this, and it's really a consultancy first approach, the reason why we do this is because this resonates with whether or not behavior is moving to what the business is expecting. And here's the amazing thing as well, too. When you define this in the right way, that then gives you the chance to measure better for what you're trying to do. So a few shifts that are really important here as we move away from knowledge and we stick towards behavior. We really try and scrutinize what this looks like in performance. And that might be tough to do depending on what your organization is like or the stakeholders you have access to. It's a consultancy first approach rather than a build first approach. So resisting that temptation and then resisting that temptation further to actually say measurement is the second thing we need to do. And you can imagine being in a place where behavioral insights start to emerge here rather than vanity metrics. And the reason why we believe in the impact canvas so much is because it is really, we believe in the philosophy of starting how we want to finish. So a properly filled out impact canvas just becomes a nice little thing we take throughout the program so that we can say, hey, did we do the thing that we wanted to do? It was all properly articulated as there as well too, including what we wanted to measure. Getting really strongly tapped into business is such an important moment right now with the increased scrutiny into people spend, skills spend, with everything being dominated by technical spend in AI. I believe there's an underserve of people investment, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be held accountable for what exactly that people investment needs to be. The impact canvas helps us give us that scrutiny and a strong backbone to build upon. So what's the business trying to solve? And it's not a knowledge problem here, it's a behavioral problem. And really try and figure out what's the behavioral shift required to get there. This is the shift from head to hands. We want to have clarity. What are the things that people want to do differently tomorrow? And the great thing is that the business is dying to know this themselves, but people are too. People want to know, hey Josh, like you're telling me to go all in on AI. What does that mean for like what is this supposed to change tomorrow? Show me very specifically, and let's build around the context of that. Okay, last rule, and I'm moving at pace over here, so happy to answer any questions as we get towards the end of it. But the last rule is a really important one. And momentum is a word that I often think a lot about in this particular moment because we're all sort of scrambling, it seems, to figure out the best way forward in our AI strategy. And our advice is that when you're looking for the right next move, slow down, simplify, pick one thing, and do it well. So whether it's a new model for how we better respond to the business or radically embracing a new type of enablement experience, let's just keep it focused and do one thing really well. And sort of the map that we use if you're trying to figure out your next move is, well, one, you could raise the floor, so general awareness. Two, raise the ceiling, perhaps take some champions aside, some first movers aside, and do some focused acceleration experimentation. I think we all know so much of this hangs on leadership's feet. What are we doing to get them enabled, but also getting them confident themselves on their own AI story? And then lastly, of course, what you can do is get just more front house clarity. Contextualization of strategy is so important in this particular moment. Let me give you a quick story of what that looks like through a customer lens. This was a B2B SaaS company that we've been working with, and they came to us by and saying, "Hey, we've got strong, clear AI ambition, and we need a stronger message for our people in front of our customers so that our customer-facing teams feel more fluent in AI." Now, it was easy to dismiss this and just go, hey, just let's teach people about a general thing about AI, one definition and crack on. But what we actually did was map AI fluency by role. And you can see the contextualized process. We drilled down, we drilled down, we drilled down. And then from there, once we did that, then we got to name the current state and the future state, and then define the opportunity for what needs to shift in there. So this wasn't just about building a course or producing content. It was about aligning leaders, managers, and learners around what good looks like, then designing practice that helped people build confidence in the real moments where AI needed to show up. And so for this lane, it was really kind of simple. And this was a combination of contextualization and raising the floor. If you want people to adopt AI, don't define fluency in the abstract, define it within the work. And so that's something that we used to really contextualize what AI fluency meant for this large team. And if you're trying to figure out what your lane is, well, focus on your pain points. If you don't know what your lane is, I guarantee you, you know what your biggest pain points are. So think about what your pain points are, and you can align that then to, well, I think I know what's the best lane for me to figure out my next move. And the good news is, don't worry. One of the goodies we're going to share with you is we've actually got a diagnostic tool. We call it Atlas, the AI team launch and adoption strategy tool. It'll help you figure out which lane is most appropriate for you. So then that way, when you're looking through, you can say, hey, oh, okay, this one's the most that's most relevant to me. So the last of our three rules are, well, get the momentum that you're looking for by staying focused. And what's the pain point that, if addressed first, will create the most amount of value? We know that there's a lot of pressure on us to get this right, to get the script right, and to make sure that we're trying to scale it in the right way. So think of what is the lane that has the best potential to codify and scale that'll just get you high visibility amongst the organization right now. So remember, experience matters, solve what the business needs, and focus gets you momentum. 6 questions that I'd love for you to bring to your next leadership meeting. I think it'll be a really rich discussion. Please reach out to me if you asked any of these questions and what kind of discussion you got into. Would love to chat about it further. And just as we wrap up, I just wanted to share why we're here again. And I think that's an important grounding for all of us is that we're all responsible for executing some part of our AI strategy. But our AI strategy means nothing, nada, zilch, until people start doing things differently. And so now is the moment not for click-through courses. We need to rethink enablement because the stakes are too high. The business is demanding more. It needs to be better calibrated to solve business problems. But people are also numb and exhausted and potentially resistant. And we need a breakthrough in humanness, in human-led enablement in order to fuel people and get them reconnected back to the work. So there's just one thing I need you to walk away with today is remember that people enablement in the AI era is about protecting and promoting human value in the most human way possible. And only then will people start doing things differently. And let's just remember, as we're all trying to figure out our yellow brick road on the way to the Emerald City, let's just remember who's really behind the curtain. And the road feels more human than ever in this interesting journey that we're all on. I mentioned oodles of stuff, and here is the oodles. Thank you so much for your time today. I mentioned the impact canvas. Please try it out. We swear by it. We use it in all of our customer engagements. Please read the white paper as well too. I do think it'll be a tremendous use of your time. I'm just curious about what you think as well too. We have a diagnostic tool, and bonus one, we also have a leader's guide for what AI adoption looks like in this moment, including our point of view on the critical skills that leaders need in this particular moment. Any questions, any that I can field? I'm just checking my messages right now. Probably one to touch on as well too about the impact canvas. I can give you a real world example of what that looks like in action. But that is some call outs. it's really hard to define behaviors. And it's really, and probably a question I wouldn't ask when we do kickoffs in the impact canvas is, what does success look like for you? There's a very clear distinction between what is a goal, an ambition, and a behavior. And so sometimes when with our customers, I'll use a typical example of sales, we need our people to sell in a more solution-oriented way. That feels like a goal, but that's not a behavior. So what's the behaviors that underlie something like that? So that could be very specifically from closed questions to open questions, as an example. So it's often a tripping point for a lot of our stakeholders is that it feels a little bit uncomfortable at first to talk in the language of behaviors. But once you get people going and once you facilitate a language of these are behaviors or these are not, then that gives people a little bit more structure and language to go, oh, okay. I think the other piece as well, too, is that how do we think about that through the lens of performance? It'll be a lot easier to engage your managers or even some of your top performers to say these are the key performance moments in which they show up. Just seeing a question right now. So what if none of this works? We need to go back to square one to determine if our strategy was designed correctly for the most part or complete. You know what? I think we're all in this journey of what if none of this works right now too. I think the piece that we need to think about, and the stat that has really stood out to me in my reading of late is sort of the emergent de-skilling crisis. Whether this works or doesn't, humans are still going to be at the center of organizational value, at least my belief in this particular moment. And so we've got to protect our talent, bring them along the journey of what is going to obviously be a reshaping of our ways of work. But something that has given me a lot of hope and pause is just how much those skills, and I put up that constellation of skills, how much I, as a leader, relate to that. And I think as long as people see themselves in the change and people see themselves in the story, you'd be surprised how much buy-in you get. And so we're still in the ups and downs of this journey, but just the idea of humans seeing themselves in a more human picture, I think is enough to start getting people reconnected and back to the work. Hope that answers your question. That's a tough one. Hi, Josh. I'm hearing about a lot of young people struggling to get entry-level jobs because AI can do it faster, better. Often, I also heard that they don't even meet a human at the interview stage. I saw that as well, too. There's a great Wired article about AI-driven interviews. So do you have any wisdom to share on this? What is your view, or what would you suggest we do to ensure young people can enter the workplace market? Oh, great question. We're actually working with the professional services client right now that is we're helping them reimagine their new grad onboarding experience. And this is exactly this particular moment. On one side, those entering the workforce feel quite ill prepared to get in, not to mention the idea of entering into a hybrid world and how strange that must feel to have that be your entry point. But then organizations also have the criticism to say, oh, well, they don't feel prepared. However, go and build AI agents. That should be your job. Reprioritize mentoring, reprioritize development through osmosis. In a hybrid world, and there's so many pros to go with hybrid, but I think we lose the idea of how much informal learning, especially young in your career, early in your career, matters. So create the space, if you're a leader, create the space for that intentional job shadowing, create the space in your managers to do that debriefing and that feedback. We're talking about the next generation of your organization that actually does the grunt of your work, whether you think about it or not. And as we're trying to figure out why this AI output is not necessarily getting us to the place that it needs to be, you still need someone who's going to have the critical thinking to review that output. Ask yourself in your succession planning whether you've got the next generation of critical thinkers in your team or not. Great question and great comments. Thank you. I think that's it for today. There's a little box in the corner over there for me. Please connect with me over LinkedIn if you liked anything that you saw today. It's an absolute pleasure to spend time with you. And all the goodies that we have should be in the link in the comments, I believe, as well, too. So just thank you so much for your time.